This program is brought to you by UCKG.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Chrissy B Show, the UK's only TV programme that's dedicated to mental health and well-being. So today we're talking about a subject that affects all of us at some point in our life. Sometimes we know in advance that it's going to happen, and sometimes it comes as a complete shock. And it's one of the hardest things in life to deal with. I'm talking about losing someone we love through illness or an accident. Grieving is a natural process, but how can we avoid it getting out of hand? Or can we? To help us answer these questions is our resident psychologist, Dr. Audrey Tang. We then hear from our real-life story guest, Kellyann Mitchell, on how grief affected her mental health. And we should never underestimate the positive impact that good nutrition can have on our mental health, especially when going through hard and stressful times. So nutritionist Lily Soutter gives us a recipe that is sure to help the mind heal. Now, despite being an emotion we may be familiar with, not many of us know how to define grief. According to the Mayo Clinic, grief is described as an overwhelming and natural reaction to loss that can be felt both personally and universally. Whilst grief is an internal emotion, mourning is the external reaction to grief and is expressed through talking about a lost loved one, crying, anger and depression. Yet, despite a common feeling we all face sometime in our lives, why is grief and death never spoken about? Well, according to the BBC, despite 32% of us thinking about death or dying at least once a week, we have associated death as something that only happens with older generations. And with The Guardian reporting that death anxiety appears to be at the core of several mental health disorders, including health anxiety, panic disorder, and depressive disorders, perhaps having a more open mind to the inevitability of the end may help with the grieving process altogether. But what does the general public on Twitter have to say about this? Unpack Sparkle gives their advice. They say, for the grieving, not only can you move through grief, if you integrate the loss in your life, you can find yourself on a journey to better. Blaz makes the poignant point, stating there is no healing without grieving. Porto Funeral Homes say, make yourself a priority when grieving. Focus on your needs before worrying about others. Rev Juju agrees, saying grieving loss of any kind is necessary, vital and healing. Allow yourself space to weep. Shannon says, when you're grieving and you think you've passed the worst but you haven't, it's okay to have an ugly cry. There is no pattern to grief. And when we asked you for your thoughts, here's what our viewers had to say. Neitha Pilgrim replied, saying, grieving is the natural, healthy process after death for balance. It is an equilibrium like inhale, exhale. And John Ryan says, bottle of whiskey, tears, beans on toast for 2 days, then talk, talk, talk is what worked for me. So some very interesting thoughts on grief there. But what does our resident psychologist, Dr. Audrey Tang, have to say about the mental implications of grief? Well, here she is. Welcome to the show, Audrey.
Thanks for having me. Lovely to be here.
So today a difficult subject to discuss, but one that does need to be talked about.
Very important to talk about because a lot of people go through it, and people are likely to go through it at one point in their lives. At some point.
Okay. So I'll briefly explain what grief was in the intro, but can you tell us a bit more in detail what it is?
It's a feeling of intense sadness that usually follows the death or the loss of a loved one. It can follow a breakup of a relationship, something that is very unlikely to be repaired again, but often it does follow death. And when it comes to grieving, symptoms can include that constant feeling of being low, depression. It can go into that. It can even result in slightly deeper psychological issues such as phobias or OCDs, especially if the shock of the death was particularly violent, surprising, it wasn't expected. It can be for children sometimes, say they've gone to school and then something's happened during that time. That can lead to agoraphobia. They don't want to leave the house anymore because they're afraid that might happen, and they may not be able to really understand that, but those are the extra repercussions that can go on. So grief it's a very difficult subject, but it's a very important one that we do need to look at.
What's the difference between grief and missing someone, though?
Missing someone it's a feeling of sadness. It's probably not as intense as with grief, and also it tends to subside a lot faster. Often because if we're just missing someone, it's likely that we're going to see them again. So that feeling of, I miss you now because you're going away for the week or whatever it is, but I'll see you next week. There's an end point to it. With grief, it's the shock of grief, because it is that permanent loss, and the stress of grief can actually lead to physiological changes as well as the psychological ones. So research has shown that the shock of that heartbreak can sometimes increase the likelihood of a heart attack by 20 to 35%, which is actually quite high.
That's why you hear sometimes when, like, for example, a spouse dies in maybe a week or whatever, or even like children, sometimes when children's mums died afterwards as well, haven't they?
Yeah, that's it. And that's a lot to do with the stress of grief and the shock of grief. What they've also found recently is there can be permanent scars found on the heart muscle as well.
Really?
So there is this idea that you can have a broken heart. It can affect you in that way. The more shocking, sadly, the more violent that death may be, the worse that can be. And it does tend to be seen more as well in women who've lost a child. Because that's, of course, one of the most painful.
What to do then if you have lost someone and you are in this process?
You need to give yourself time and space in order to work through a lot of things. What you'll find is, certainly in the early stages, little things might trigger it. The bringing out of 2 cups instead of 1 can suddenly trigger that realisation. There is a process of grief that people go through, but I'm very loath to go into that too deeply, just because everyone processes grief differently. And I don't want anyone to think, I haven't gone through those stages.
There's something wrong.
Yeah. It's not that at all. But generally, you follow the process of the shock and having to deal with that first. The pain of the loss. Then sometimes anger as well. The why have you taken that person? Why them? Why now? And with that can even come that bargaining. Bargaining I also see coming before the actual loss, especially if somebody is terminally ill or something like that. It's that please, I'll do anything if you'll save so-and-so, and that's very painful to get through. But after you've gone through those and worked through those, I don't mean it doesn't just pass through. It's not something that just happens. You often have to do a lot of thinking, a lot of processing. You then get to the acceptance of it, the hope, and being able not to move forward, but actually start building up your life again from this new standpoint. However, whilst this process is something that a lot of people are likely to go through, and people can be at different stages, you can stay there at different stages, unfortunately it can affect people differently too, and we have to be quite mindful of that. Women tend to need to talk about grief, and that's really helpful for them, but men prefer to do something or to just work through it by themselves, and unfortunately the different ways of behaving when it comes to grieving can cause further problems for, say, a relationship, because you've got one person who really wants to talk, but the other person who seems to be withdrawing, but that doesn't mean they're not feeling the grief as intensely. So we've got to be very aware of how people process grief. And just very quickly, Audrey, as well, regarding family members, what can they do to help with this situation? Give that person time and space to be able to grieve. And what's quite important here is, if that person's got children, to maybe be the person who can listen to the children, or take the children away for a little bit of time, a change of scenery, so the parent can actually have that space to themselves to work through exactly what they're going through. Respect their wishes, but also be mindful that when somebody says something like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, or no, thank you for asking me, I don't want to go out, there may be other reasons why. They may be afraid of something triggering it off, and then it's really sad, but the embarrassment of crying, and of course it's not embarrassing at all, you are allowed to feel how you feel, but it's that thing of, oh, what if I can't manage myself, what if I embarrass myself, embarrass my friends, or can't stop thinking about it. So sometimes it's a case of respecting wishes, but just listening that little bit more deeply to see whether maybe, okay, you don't want to go out, but I'll just sit here in case you want to talk. And also offering to do practical things, but not necessarily enforcing a choice on that person. One of the things I remember was I was with a friend who was having to deal with his mum's funeral, and his friends, one of them was the person delivering a lot of the funeral itself, and he was asking very kindly all of these questions. He just wasn't in a state to be able to answer those questions, and that decision can place another bit of pressure on that person. Be very vigilant if the person grieving is also caring for somebody else, because that can cause extra stress, and that can lead to something called complicated grief, whilst that the person who's grieving isn't given the space to be able to work through all these things. The process of going through it is very hard, therefore it's really important to be able to take each bit as it comes, and face it.
Okay, brilliant. Audrey, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And we'll see you again next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, now here to talk about her experiences with the loss is our real life story guest, Kellyann Mitchell. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
So thanks so much for coming on to talk about this, because you have been through a very difficult time in your life. But can you tell us first of all when your mental health issues started?
It was quite a while ago now. It was late teens, and then I was in an abusive relationship which really brought it on.
Okay.
Then my death of my daughter, that really that brought on post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay, so before your daughter died, what kind of mental health issues are we talking about here? Was it?
It's called borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
So that was quite difficult to live with anyway.
Can you explain briefly like the kind of things that you go through with that?
You're nervous all the time. Sometimes you don't want to leave the house. It's a lot of anxiety with everything.
Okay. So would you say that you couldn't really live a normal life then?
I do lead more of a normal life now that I understand it.
Okay.
And with my own personal therapy that I'm using.
So
but
things are easier now than they before.
It's definitely possible to have a normal life.
Okay. And Kellyann, you mentioned that you lost your daughter. Can you talk us through that? What actually happened?
Well, I was halfway through my pregnancy, and I went into premature labour.
Okay.
I was losing a lot of blood, so my body just tried to get rid of what was causing the problem. So I went into labour, and she was a few days off of the time when you can help them out and put them into an incubator. And yeah.
Was that the first time that you'd experienced a loss like that?
Such a personal loss, yeah.
Okay, all right. And then how did you deal with that? Because obviously you must have been grieving, and what was it that you went through? Really, what happened?
Yeah, I just wasn't me. I was a very horrible person to live with. I was very angry. It was everybody's fault. I was just very consumed by anger and grief.
Were you in shock at first? Was it something like, okay, I don't believe this has happened to me, or were you just so shocked?
It was, yeah. On the day that I actually gave birth, I felt a bit happy. I had my body back, and I was instantly getting better. And I felt like, why am I feeling really good when I've just had a really significant loss? And it didn't hit me for a good few weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And then when it did, then what was that like?
It was like plummeting to the ground. I was on cloud 9 1 minute, and then next minute going 300 feet under.
I think this is an important point that you're talking about here, because especially for family members that are watching, because you might have a friend or loved one that's been through a loss, and you think, oh, they're dealing with it really well, they're getting on with things, and then all of a sudden they kind of just seem to fall apart, and you're wondering, well, they've been all right all this time, why now? But sometimes it's just because it hasn't actually sunk in yet, has it? And
I think a lot of people thought that with me as well, and thought, oh, well, that was ages ago, and it's just not like that. Did
you get any help at that point? Did you ask for counselling or anything like that, or did you try to deal with it on your own?
I just tried to deal with it on my own, and there was a point where I did try and kill myself. So I then went to get help, but there's no help for things. There was no help that I could get
At the time?
At that time, yeah.
Okay. So only after you tried to kill yourself, then you were offered help?
I was offered an appointment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it was then that I realised that I had to do it on my own.
Mm-hmm. Did you not, what about friends and family? Or had you kind of sort of shut off from them?
I had friends that tried to help me.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't. It's just something you have to do on the inside.
Mm-hmm. In some cases, right? Because obviously some people need support, others are maybe a bit more independent, but it's always, I think everyone, like I said, has to find their own way of...
Yeah, because I'm more of a person that gets on with things, does things by themselves. I don't need anybody, I can do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you? Or have you needed help at some point?
I think if I didn't have help, I wouldn't be here today.
All right.
So yeah.
So then eventually you found something that works for you. And how are things now?
Things are, my life has never been better now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before I felt really old, like dragged down. How can my life carry on? Mm-hmm. And now I can't wait to see what's going to happen next week. And things are always moving in some direction. Mm-hmm. The main thing that I did do as part of my personal recovery was make a bucket list of things that I wanted to do.
Okay. Tell us a few of the things on there.
I've nearly crossed everything off.
Really?
Yeah. So to be in a music video was on one of them. Okay. And I'm actually making one now. Okay. And originally I just wanted to be in one, but now I'm...
Like just doing your own one?
Now I'm doing it. Yeah, I've written it. I'm going to star in it. Yeah. It's going to be for awareness, so it's going to be good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that's one more thing that was on your bucket list that you've done.
Well, the top one was a skydive.
Oh, you've done that?
Yeah, I just put it on because that's what you normally put on a list.
I was talking about that with someone just earlier before the show, actually.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd actually cross it off, but I did.
Oh, when did you do that? Was it
last year? This time last year. Yeah, it was terrifying.
I know. Well, you're glad you did it?
I am glad, yeah. Now that I made it, made it out.
Brilliant. So you've got a few more things to tick off, and I think that's a really nice thing actually that you've done, because it's sort of focusing on the future and doing certain things instead of staying in the same place, which I think is really positive.
Yeah, because at the time you are thinking a lot about the inside and the stuff that's happened to you rather than what can you do to make it better and to fill it with good memories rather than bad.
Yeah,
and that's the
really
main
positive
thing.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect sentence to end on, actually, Kellyann, because I think that's very positive what you've said there. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thanks for having me.
And looking forward to seeing your music video very soon.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, guys, so after the break, we check back in with Helena Shard in the latest in Feel Good News, and we show you how photography can be used to help through the grieving process. But first, is this true or false? Everyone who grieves goes through 5 natural stages in the grieving process, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Is this true or not? What do you think? Find out the answer after this break.
This program is brought to you by UCKG. This program is brought to you by UCKG.
Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, everyone, your TV program for all things mental health and well-being. So before the break, we asked you if this was true or false. Everyone who grieves goes through 5 natural stages in the grieving process, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The answer, well, this may surprise you, is actually false. According to the Kansas State Department of Education, the stages of grief idea emerged from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's groundbreaking book on death and dying. However, Dr. Kubler-Ross did not intend for these emotions to be interpreted as stages, but rather wants to help people understand that denial, anger, guilt, and sadness are common and expected reactions towards death. So today's topic may have you feeling a little introspective, but don't fret, it's time for our weekly dose of positivity with Behind the Fame and Helena Shard. Hello, Helena.
Hi, Chrissy.
Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So what positive news do you have for us today?
Well, I was watching something on Country File. I don't often watch it on TV.
I haven't,
and it
never.
was, yeah, have you not?
No.
And they were talking about men in sheds. I know, which sounds a bit bizarre.
Okay.
But it's something to do with the UK Men's Shed Association, which is a charity, which is something which is really...
Really?
No, I'll say, it's to do with, it's a communal working project for elderly men who are quite lonely. So they maybe suffered a bereavement, like their wife or family, and they're quite isolated. So it's it's to combat loneliness, and they get together. It originated from Australia, and now it's over here, and it's actually really grown.
Okay.
So they get together, so camaraderie and everything, and they make things and do things in the local community as well.
Okay.
And it's a real success. And another fun story as well. Well, it's a feel-good story, should I say. So there's a lady called Marlena Brooks, 37, who lives in Missouri, and she made a special friendship with Wanda Mills, who's 90. Okay. And it was something that happened. She got home one day and she found a letter there, and it was from Wanda saying that she was really lonely, that she'd in fact lost all her friends and didn't know anybody and was stuck in the house. And in fact, the house was only a few roads from where Marlena lived. And obviously it was such a heartfelt, she couldn't believe that someone was there, and she rushed over there. But from that, very quickly, a really lovely bond has grown, and she takes her family and the children, and they just chat. It's so nice, it's just so special. But it was so special for Marlena too, who feels that, that it's something special for her, that she didn't have such a good relationship with her grandmother for whatever reason, and she feels like she's got a grandmother back.
That's actually a very nice idea, guys. If you at home didn't have a good relationship with your grandma, you can adopt one. There's so many out there, or granddad, you can adopt one, and you can just go and visit them and spend time with them and take your kids around and cook for them or do something nice.
And you just children get so much good fun as well from elderly people.
Because you don't always, have the relationship that you dream of with certain family members, but who's to say that your family members just need to be blood related? You can make family members. You can adopt someone. I think we should adopt a family member, people.
I think so. Yeah. But anyway, so one thing that Marlene has also done is Pen Pals for Seniors. So it's an organisation, as you can imagine, it's quite self-explicit, but it's for lonely elders, which I think is
Adopt a Granny. Adoptagranny.com. I bet there's one already.
No, I think it's lovely. I thought, how beautiful.
I think we should start our charity, Helena.
Yeah, I think so too. Come on, tonight. Moving on, I love it when people talk about their lives. We always like hearing that people are suffering from anxiety or something, because it sort of resonates and makes people think, wow, and it's good to talk, as we know. I was surprised, I suppose, in a way. Emma Stone, who's now 28, and she's a really good actress who starred in La La Land. And she talked about how she started therapy for anxiety when she was 7.
Wow.
When she was 7. And it really, she really was, panic attacks, which are quite severe. And she believed that she never would be able to leave Arizona and follow her passion, which was acting. But actually acting took her out of her anxiety. And when she was 15, she actually moved to Hollywood. So she's done incredibly well. So that's good to know too. And for me as well, I don't know, Nadia Hussain, who won Bake Off. I don't
watch Bake Off,
but she's such a good role model now, and she's achieved so much. But she's been talking about, it was a fun article about her panic disorder monster and facing her fears. But as a result, she talks about that she has to agree to everything almost that she's asked to do, because if she doesn't, this little monster comes out and starts. I know, so it must be quite stressful.
That little monster needs to be strangled.
I know, but when she says yes and she gets on with it and does well, and then she can put the monster back in her pocket.
Okay.
So it's just a very simple thing, but she's fabulous. She's done so much, books out. She's got her own Chronicles of Nadia, and she's just done amazingly well. Chronicles of Chrissy. Anyway, so which is fun. And there's just a fun little piece that which was Doppelgangers and Museums, so lookalikes, again, something I'm interested in. So the people have been putting pictures of themselves with lots of like, I don't know, sculptures and things that they've seen in museums, and just posting them on Facebook and everywhere, and there's loads of them at the moment. I always find myself in Greek churches, my face and everything. And so there's, as a result, there's a new thing. It's coming out in October 2018, but it's in the Musée de la Civilisation Quebec City, where they're actually doing this huge, great big matching people's faces with like sculptures from years and years ago.
Oh wow!
And it's amazing how people just look so similar. So it's good to watch out for.
Now I'm curious.
Well, watch out.
To find my lookalike.
Honestly, everyone's got a twin. I do believe it. So it's a funny little bit.
Helena, thank you so much.
Thank you as always.
And we shall see you again next week.
Good.
And we'll let everybody know how our Adopt a Granny charity is going and get you involved as well. Thank you, Helena. Well, losing a loved one suddenly is a terrible shock, but losing a loved one also who has suffered with a terminal illness is just as bad at times. So in this video, photographer Mark Seymour explains how he took to photography to not only document his father's Alzheimer's, but also to creatively find a way to come to peace with it. Let's take a look.
The photographs we see here really started developing organically and naturally. I didn't actually set out to do a project of my dad. I didn't set out to cover his life as he was dying or as he had Alzheimer's. I just photographed my family all the time. Having said that, I did step it up when he was diagnosed, but there was no plan to make an exhibition at that point. Everything you see here was shot just from the heart and was done to document, my dad and my family. But when I was taking the pictures, that was, I felt, quite easy to take. But when I was processing the images in front of the computer screen, that's when the tears came and the realization came, and it was quite hard hitting to see Dad on a screen and then go through that processing, and that's when the tears came. By taking these photographs and by showing these photographs, the awareness is raised has been immense, and the amount of people that have come to me and told me their story, or the amount of people that it resonates with, is unbelievable. Almost everyone has got a story to tell you because they know someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, and it's great that it's now getting awareness, and that we're looking for cures for dementia. A lot of people, they don't understand what someone goes through or what happens to a person in this condition, but by looking at these images, these 20 images here, you can tell a story. The period from the first to the last is about 4 years. Having said that, the period from mum crying with the nurse to the end is less than 12 months. So 50% of them is less than 12 months. I think, going back to what I said initially, this didn't start off as a project. So as a professional photographer, I have projects that I'm working on, and I keep going back and revisiting them and developing them. But this was just part of everyday life, so it grew organically. It makes me realise, that there's nothing more powerful than pure documentary images, because it tells a story, and you can pose someone and it never tells a story. It may be a nice portrait of that person and a beautiful photograph, but the best photographs in the world are those that tell stories. And with this type of photography, you can make people laugh, you can make people cry, you can make people happy, and only observational documentary photography can do that. If I say from a journalistic point of view, the most powerful images, I think it's the last two in the series. They're the most powerful. But if I have, say, my favourite image, it's the portraits of Dad, the one with his harmonica, and the picture of Dad outside his home where they've lived their whole lives. They're the images that, you know, I want to go away with. And when Mum comes to see the exhibition the other week, I said, let's just look at these last two images and let's go away with these thoughts with Dad with a smile on his face.
Thanks very much to Mark for that video. Well, after the break, nutritionist Lily Soutter shows us how to make a delicious berry smoothie bowl that's sure to perk you up when you're feeling down. And she also answers your nutritional questions, including this one. How can I get protein on a vegan diet? Find out the answer after this break. Chrissy B, and my show is all about improving your mental health and being happy. Join me every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 10 p.m. on my channel Sky 203. Visit chrissybshow.tv for more information and subscribe to our YouTube channel Chrissy B Show. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chrissy B Show and on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show.
This program is brought to you by UCKG. This program is brought to you by UCKG.
Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, everyone, the TV program that looks after your mental health and well-being. So joining us now in the studio is our nutritionist, Lily Soutter. Hello, Lily.
Hello.
Welcome back to the program today. So our topic today is grief. Any ideas on how nutrition maybe can help that grieving process?
Well, the food will affect our mood. It can affect it in a positive way and then a not so positive way. And it's really important to have a good diet to be able to deal and manage with any sort of traumatic event that's going on. If you are following a diet where you are focusing very much on convenience food and fast food, like lots of white refined carbohydrates, like white bread, white pasta, white rice, white flour, as well as a lot of like quick fix foods, like lots of sugary quick fix foods, it's not going to do anything for your mood. It will actually hinder a good mood, and it's not going to help support you with that extreme stress. Conversely, if you kind of follow a diet which is full of fruits, fresh vegetables, healthy fats, especially things like omega-3 fats, which we know can have positive effects on our mood, and we know it's important for brain health as well as good quality protein in the diet, you're going to be better equipped to be able to sort of deal with the highs and lows that come after sort of an extreme crisis or traumatic event.
And that's important, especially if you have dependents.
Absolutely.
You still need to look after your family, you need to get on with things. So.
Absolutely. And the thing is also is that when people are under extreme stress, sometimes their appetite just goes and sort of their desire to cook sort of fades as well. So it's thinking about what can you cook, which is really simple, 3 to 4 ingredient meals are just as healthy and can be just as tasty as ridiculously long recipe lists and complicated meals as well. And simple things like just poaching a salmon or frying a salmon fillet, which takes minutes to do. If you don't have time to do that, you can actually buy pre-poached salmon fillets from a lot of supermarkets. Most vegetables you can throw in the microwave. Spinach takes about a minute to cook, as well as things like sweet potato, brown rice. You can now buy packets of brown rice which are already kind of half cooked, and it's not hugely harmful to you. It's better than having something which is really nutrient poor ready meal basically. So just simple things like that are really, really quick to do. As are smoothies and soups. So when your appetite is low, soups can be a very quick way to get nourishing food within the diet basically, and they're easy to eat, easy to prep. You just throw all the vegetables in a pan, leave it to simmer, blend, and then you can freeze portions for a later date. And if you don't have a huge appetite, they're not too filling.
And today you're going to make a smoothie for us.
So
smoothie bowl?
Smoothie bowl. The reasoning for this is, again, smoothies can be filling, but they can also not be so filling for some as well, depending on how you make it.
Okay.
But it's a really quick way of getting, you know, nutrient-dense foods within your diet, and you're getting lots of different food groups in there as well. So it's going to be a blueberry and sort of Greek yogurt smoothie. So we're using the Greek yogurt for the protein element, which can help to balance blood sugar and which can help to keep mood stable as well. Blueberries are full of antioxidants and vitamin C. We're going to use a almond milk purely just because it's slightly less fatty than a regular milk, so it just works better in the smoothie. And then we're going to top it with pomegranate and some pumpkin seeds as well, which are protein rich as well.
Okay, let's take it away.
Great. So first of all, I
love all these ingredients, by the way. So it's a winner for me already.
We pour some blueberries into the NutriBullet. And then next of all, we do the Greek yogurt.
One of my faves.
Yeah. And then some almond milk.
I mean, if you wanted to, you know, saying about the normal milk being fatty, can you just mix some, maybe put part milk, part water?
You can do part milk, part water. Which is absolutely fine. There's actually not much difference. The benefit of having the regular milk is you get the additional protein from it as well. So,
alrighty.
And then, do you want to blend it?
Sure. What's this? Beautiful colour already.
Yeah.
Look at that. Wow.
Perfect. And then just pour it into the bowl.
A beautiful colour.
So for like slightly thicker smoothies, if you want it to be easier to eat out the bowl, you just put a little bit less almond milk, and I'd probably put a little bit too much.
Alright.
A little bit.
Does that mean the pomegranate seeds and the things are going to sink?
Well, let's try. No.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's great. So you just
I really thought they'd be sinking.
Yeah, me too. So we just sprinkle the pomegranate seeds on top, which just gives it like an additional crunch, and also it makes your food look very pretty.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to mix it in there, it would still be nice, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Even just like,
it generally does just mix in anyway. And then the pumpkin seeds as well.
So quick.
Which gives, pumpkin seeds are actually really rich in healthy fats, which is great. And we need these essential fats for brain health. 60% of the brain is actually made up of fat, so it's really important that you are consuming enough sort of omega-3s in your diet.
And that looks so pretty as well.
Yeah,
very
definitely.
Nice.
So yeah,
okay, I should be trying that.
Yay.
After this, I won't do it now because I'm going to make a mess. And also, Lily, we have a couple of questions for you from our viewers. There's one of which we asked before the break, and this viewer is asking, how do I get protein on a vegan diet?
Okay, so with protein, it's important to think about the quantities of protein, but also the quality of protein. So just to give you an example, in animal-based protein, say you take an egg, it contains all the essential amino acids that you need to make a complete protein. So amino acids are basically like little balls which bond together to form a structure, and that makes the complete protein. They're basically part of a protein molecule. And in animal products like the yogurt as well, you have all those amino acids that you need to make a complete protein, which is obviously really, really important for all aspects of health within the body. Within plant-based sources of protein, so plant-based could be beans, lentils, chickpeas, nuts and seeds. There's obviously going to not be all those essential amino acids in the plant-based protein. So for example, chickpeas, you may find a lot more of one of these kind of balls or amino acids, and then say in pumpkin seeds, you find a lot more of a different amino acid in there. So the key is to combine your protein sources so that all these balls kind of form a jigsaw and make a complete protein structure. So you have all the amino acids you need. So focusing on combinations. So if you're going to have chickpeas, combine them with lots of seeds and nuts. If you're going to have lentils, combine them with a bean of some kind, or some oats, which do have some protein molecules within them. So it's important to combine all your protein sources as much as possible. Soy is kind of, I think it's almost a complete protein, so it's a good source of protein. Tempeh and tofu are pretty high quality proteins as well, so they can make a really good alternative to sort of meat, fish and eggs and dairy.
Okay, all right, brilliant. Next question. Is it okay to eat carbohydrates if I'm trying to lose weight?
Absolutely. So we know that research has shown that a low carb diet is quite effective up to 6 months. So it has been shown to cause weight loss, but after 6 months and up to a year, there's no difference between a low carbohydrate and a normal carbohydrate diet. So you almost catch up, and we think that this is because people simply can't maintain a low carbohydrate diet for ongoing. Sometimes, you know, excluding food groups such as carbs from the diet simply means that you're more aware of what you're eating, and you tend to increase protein content in your diet, which has kind of got appetite suppressing effects. But that's probably the reasoning for it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's super healthy to do it either, because you lack a huge amount of fibre when you're in a long-term low-carb diet. You exclude a lot of vitamins and minerals from your diet, which are really essential, and it can really affect mood. For some people, they can actually end up feeling quite low on low-carb diets. So to be completely honest, there's no difference. The research shows between an average carb diet and a low-carb diet, at a year, there's no difference. So if you're thinking about long-term weight loss, it doesn't matter either or.
Eat your carbs, your good carbs. Okay. And one last question for you today, Lily. Is it possible to lower blood pressure with diet? If so, how?
Definitely. So the first thing obviously is reduce salt within the diet. Salt is literally everywhere. So, you know, if you're eating out a lot, be aware of the salt content of foods. Like I've researched some menus, and some dishes have up to 10 grams of salt in them. Our max in the UK that we can have per day is 6 grams.
You're joking.
And that's still
per day, not even per meal.
Yeah, and that's still relatively high actually. So trying to eat out a little less, or being aware of the salt content, look at the menus if you can. Try and not get loads of ready meals, because generally the salt content is in red. So if you look at the traffic light labelling systems on the front of packs, it will be in red, which means it's too high in salt. So cooking from scratch, getting lots of veg into your diet, so lots of colourful vegetables, because these tend to be, and also fruit, these tend to be rich in potassium. Potassium almost counteracts sodium, so salt. So it kind of helps to lower blood pressure in a way. Good. So, and the other areas you may want to look at are exercising, weight loss, reducing alcohol consumption. And beetroot juice has also been shown to reduce lower blood pressure temporarily. So sort of, I'm not sure how long it is afterwards. It's not long term. But if you have a cup of beetroot juice, your blood pressure will lower afterwards.
Okay, brilliant. Lily, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I shall be trying that in just a moment. And by the way, if you have any questions for any of our nutritionists, you can email us on nutrition@chrissybshow.tv, and we'll see Lily again very soon. Thank you, Lily. Well, after the break, I'll be giving you some tips on how to deal with the loss of a loved one. But first, according to Help Guide, which of the following does not lead to grief? Is it A, loss of friendship, B, loss of good health, or C, loss of a cherished dream or goal? Do you know the answer? Find out if you're correct after this break.
This program is brought to you by UCKG. This program is brought to you by UCKG.
Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, everyone, where today we've been talking all about grief. Now, before the break, I asked you which of the following does not lead to grief. Is it A, loss of friendship, B, loss of good health, C, loss of a cherished dream or goal? The answer, none of them. As heard by our experts today, grief is the emotional expression of loss and can be felt for many different reasons, including moving, retiring, or even divorce. So now it's time to give you a few of my own tips on how to deal with the loss of a loved one. So the first one is to spend time with other loved ones. So of course you would want your alone time to process what's happened, and yes, you will need that time by yourself at some point, but it's not also good to completely isolate yourself from everyone and stay by yourself, because then you'll be at risk of getting depressed and developing other issues. So talk to your loved one, the other loved ones that knew the person as well. Talk to them and even laugh about things, because as I've spoken on the show before, when my father died, he was a funny person and always messing around, having fun, and we decided to dress up in his pajamas. This was after the funeral, to wear his pajamas, have a cup of tea and just talk about, the old times and the funny things. And there were so many things that we laughed about. So for example, he asked to be buried in his fishing, like his army clothes kind of thing. So he used to go hunting, and so we dressed him up in his camouflage things, and it must have looked ridiculous to the people at the funeral parlour, and even sort of some friends and relatives are saying, you can't dress him like that. They wanted to put him in a suit and stuff like that. But my dad never wore suits. He hated, looking too formal, and he was always either in his hunting clothes or in his t-shirt and jeans. So why are we going to go and then dress him up in a suit when he's died? So, those kind of things we would be laughing about. And even actually on the day of his funeral, we put him in the back of a pickup truck and drove around the places where he used to go fishing, and that's what he wanted. And again, the neighbours, you can't go and drive a body around all this stuff, but we did it. And that's the funny thing. So even like in death, we still managed to have a laugh, and that's what you kind of have to find. Yes, of course it's a difficult time, but you need to find those funny moments, things that your loved one liked to do or used to laugh about, and remember those times. It's really, really important. The next point that I'd like to highlight is ask, what would my loved one want? So if this person could see you right now, say if you've just lost them or you lost them a while ago and you're still really, grieving, what would they want for you? Would they want to see you not eating? Would they want to see you crying the whole day? So make sure that you actually look after yourself and don't keep, punishing yourself as well. But there's some people that, for example, they keep the belongings of their loved ones for years and years and years. Would they really want you to keep their clothes in the house and just be there constantly reminding them? It's not that you're going to forget them. Of course you're not going to forget them. You always have those memories, but to be surrounded by things all the time. And sometimes, for example, if I died and I could see my husband, of course I would expect him to grieve for a while, be a bit worried if he didn't grieve, at least for a little while. But then eventually I would want to see him moving on. I'd want to see him remarry. I would want to see him happy. I don't want to see him there, okay, now I'm not going to get married, I'm just going to stay by myself for the rest of my life because I lost my wife. That's not what I would want for him. So think about how your loved one would feel in that situation. The third point that I'd like to highlight is to get rid of the trauma. So we said earlier that talking about good times is important, but you also need to be mindful of the thoughts that you're having, and you need to think about the good times too. So if your loved one died of a sickness, for example, you may have seen them in a bad way, you might have seen them suffering in pain. So it's so easy for your mind to think about everything that they went through. And again, I went through this for a while, where I was just I was reliving some of the moments that my loved one went through when they were dying. And if you focus on that, it is painful, and it will keep you stuck in a certain place. And I think it's very, very important that if you're finding that you are in that place for a long time, you need to get help for that, because it will affect you eventually. Of course, the thoughts will come, but you need to focus on thinking about when the person was alive, when they were healthy, when everything was fine. Focus on those kind of memories, not the ones where, on their last legs, suffering, all those maybe things that you saw. Don't focus on those negative things. And remember, they're not in that situation anymore. So, but if you are stuck in that rut, make sure you speak to someone, make sure you get some counselling, something that will help you to move past that as well. And the fourth point is to invest in your spirituality. So I often speak about the panic attacks I used to have on this show, and what caused them was actually the phobia of death that I had. So just the thought of death or dying or losing a loved one would bring on these horrible panic attacks. But I've lost family members since my recovery, including my grandmother and my father, and I've witnessed some really terrible things in hospital, and I didn't have a panic attack. Why? Because it's something that I actually dealt with. I removed that fear from my life for good, because I decided to invest in the spiritual part of me. So I understand, me personally, I understand that death isn't the end, it's just the start. So people tend to invest a lot in their body and looking good and being healthy. They invest in relationships, but this part is often neglected. And if you want to know more, you can actually read about this on my personal website, which is mylifeafterdepression.com. Well, now we're going to go to a completely different subject. We want to ask you guys at home, how are things going with the MHD challenge? So you must know what it is by now, but we did launch this initiative a few weeks ago. And MHD challenge stands for Mental Health Dance Challenge. So we are basically challenging you to learn the dance and to video yourself doing the dance and then post it on social media challenging someone else. So in case you've not actually seen the dance video yet, we're going to show it to you in just a moment. And also, if you think that the dance moves are hard, don't worry, you don't have to do the whole thing. You can do the middle part, which is the easier part. And anyway, but also there's a tutorial on the website chrissybshow.tv if you want to give the whole thing a go. But let's take a look now at the dance video.
You made my life hell for years. But now depression, it's payback time.
You to do the Chrissy B Show's MHD challenge.
Step 1. Download the official tune and watch the tutorial on chrissybshow.tv to learn the moves. Step 2. Record yourself doing part or all of the dance and challenge others to do the same. Step 3. Post your video on social media with the hashtags MHD Challenge, Chrissy B Show and VYG. Videos will be selected to air on The Chrissy B Show on MyTV Sky 203.
We challenge you! Okay, and now I want to show you a few videos from our viewers and people that have decided to do the dance to see how they got on. So well done for giving the MHD challenge a go there. And we'd like to see your videos too. And don't forget to tag us to make sure that we find your video. And obviously the Twitter account is @ChrissyB Show and Instagram the same. Well, everyone, we have reached the end of today's program, but if you have a story that you would like to share, or you'd like to give us some comments about this program, how this program's helped you especially, please do email us on info@ChrissyBShow.tv. Until next time, bye for now.
Can I bring it down?
Yeah, it would be lovely. Yeah.
Very good. Please tell me you got that.
This program is brought to you by UCKG.